The most dangerous book ever written wasn't banned because it was wrong. It was banned because it was true. In 1559, the Catholic Church placed a slim manuscript on the Index Librorum Prohibitorum, the list of forbidden texts, not because it promoted heresy, not because it denied God, but because it told princes how power actually works. The author had been dead for 32 years by then. His name was Niccolò Machiavelli, and the secret he revealed has been deliberately mistranslated, misunderstood, and buried under 5 centuries of moral panic ever since. Here's what they don't want you to know. Every single person who has ever held power over you, every boss, every politician, every charismatic leader who made you feel small, has read this playbook. They just never told you they were using it. You've been operating with one set of rules while everyone above you operates with another. And the gap between those 2 rule books, that is where your life has been bleeding out. I'm going to hand you the other rule book right now. The one Machiavelli wrote in exile, tortured and broken, watching the men who destroyed him use the very principles he was about to codify. But here is the deal. Once you see how the game actually works, you can't unsee it. You'll notice it everywhere, in your workplace, in your relationships, in every negotiation you've ever lost. This isn't self-help. This isn't motivation. This is the operating system of human power dynamics, written by a man who watched republics fall and tyrants rise, who served in government and then got tortured by it. And by the end of this, you are going to understand why good people keep losing to bad ones, why your integrity keeps getting you punished, and what you need to do about it. Let's start with a lie you've been sold your entire life. You were taught that goodness leads to success, that if you work hard, play fair, tell the truth, and treat people with respect, you'll eventually win. This is the most expensive lie ever told, not because it is completely false, but because it is incomplete. And that gap, that missing piece, is where your power has been leaking for years. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince to celebrate evil. He wrote it because he watched good men get destroyed over and over again by men who understood a simple truth. Morality and power operate on different planes. And if you only play by the rules of morality, you will be devoured by those who play by the rules of power. Let me show you what I mean. Florence, 1502. Machiavelli is sent as an envoy to meet Cesare Borgia, one of the most brutal and effective leaders of the Italian Renaissance. Borgia had just crushed a conspiracy against him, not by being kind, not by being fair, by inviting the conspirators to a fake peace negotiation, then having them strangled. Machiavelli watched this happen, and instead of being horrified, he took notes, because Borgia understood something most people refuse to accept. In the realm of power, intentions don't matter, only outcome. You can be the most morally pure person in the world. You can have the best intentions, the kindest heart, and you will still lose to someone who understands leverage, timing, and human nature. This is the secret. Power doesn't care about your goodness. It cares about your effectiveness, and effectiveness requires you to operate in a space most people are too afraid to enter. Now, before you click away thinking this is some sociopath manifesto, let me clarify something Machiavelli himself made crystal clear. He wasn't telling you to become a monster. He was telling you that the world contains monsters. And if you don't understand how they think, you'll spend your entire life being their prey. There is a reason this knowledge has been kept from you. It is the same reason they don't teach negotiation tactics in school. The same reason your parents told you to just be nice without teaching you how to protect yourself from people who exploit niceness. The people in power benefit from your ignorance. Every time you lose a promotion to someone less qualified but more politically savvy, they benefit. Every time you get manipulated by someone who smiles while lying, they benefit. Every time you sacrifice your interests for the greater good while they hoard resources, they benefit. Machiavelli's crime wasn't that he invented these tactics. His crime was that he wrote them down for everyone to see. He pulled back the curtain on a game that was supposed to remain invisible. And for that, history has punished him with 500 years of slander. When someone calls you Machiavellian today, they mean you are manipulative, cruel, immoral. But that is not what Machiavelli taught. What he actually taught was this: understand the game before you decide how to play it. And that is what we're about to do. I'm going to walk you through the core principles of Machiavellian thought, but not as a history lesson, as a field manual, because every single one of these principles is being used against you right now, whether you realize it or not. And once you see them, you'll never be blind again. Let's start with the most misunderstood quote in history. It is better to be feared than loved. Everyone stops there. They think Machiavelli was saying you should be a tyrant. But here's what he actually wrote, the part they always leave out. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both, but above all, you must avoid being hated. See the difference? He is not advocating for cruelty. He is explaining a hierarchy of social capital. Love is unstable. It is conditional. It evaporates under pressure. Fear is reliable. It is based on consequences, not feelings. But hatred turns people into your active enemy. Hatred makes them willing to destroy themselves just to take you down. So the real lesson isn't be cruel. The real lesson is this: don't rely on people's affection to protect you. Build your position on something more solid than feelings. Think about your own life for a sec. How many times have you been nice to someone, gone out of your way to help them, only to have them turn on you the moment it benefited them? How many times have you relied on goodwill, only to discover it was transactional all along? Machiavelli saw this pattern everywhere, and he realized something brutal. Human beings are not inherently good or evil. They're inherently self-interested, and when their self-interest conflicts with their promises to you, the promises lose every single time. This doesn't mean people are monsters. It means people are predictable. And if you understand what motivates them, really motivates them, not what they say motivates them, you can navigate human systems without getting destroyed. Here is where it gets practical. You have a coworker who smiles to your face but sabotages you behind your back. Most people respond with more niceness. They try to win the person over with kindness. This is a catastrophic mistake, because you are operating on the moral plane trying to appeal to their conscience, while they're operating on the power plane trying to eliminate competition. Machiavelli would tell you to do something different. Make the cost of betrayal higher than the benefit. Not through cruelty, through consequences. Document everything. Build alliances with people who have leverage over them. Make it clear, subtly, but unmistakably, that attacks on you will result in exposure. You are not being mean, you are being effective. You are playing the game that is actually being played, not the game you wish was being played. This is the shift that changes everything. Stop asking, how do I get people to like me? Start asking, how do I make it in their interest to treat me with respect? And once you make that shift, something incredible happens. People start treating you differently, not because you become cruel, but because you become clear. You've stopped being easy prey. But here is where Machiavelli gets really dangerous. He doesn't just tell you how to defend yourself. He tells you how to take ground. And this is the part that makes people uncomfortable, because it requires you to accept a truth that goes against everything you've been taught. Sometimes you have to break the rules to protect what matters. Machiavelli called this entering into evil when forced by necessity, not evil for its own sake. Evil as a tool, evil as a last resort when all moral options have failed. Let me give you an example that'll make this concrete. You are running a company. You have 100 employees who depend on you for their livelihoods. You discover that one of your executives is embezzling, not just a little, enough to potentially sink the company. The moral thing to do is confront them, give them a chance to explain, maybe even forgive them if they show remorse. But Machiavelli would ask you a different question. What happens to the other 99 employees if you give this person time to cover their tracks? What happens if they use your mercy to destroy evidence and disappear? The truly moral choice might be the one that looks cold. Fire them immediately. Seize their accounts, prosecute without hesitation. Not because you are cruel, but because protecting the many sometimes requires being ruthless with the one. This is what Machiavelli meant by the ends justify the means. Not that any ends justify any means, but that when the stakes are high enough, when the alternative is catastrophic, you have to be willing to do things that make you uncomfortable. Most people never reach their potential because they're not willing to make this trade. They'd rather feel good about themselves than actually accomplish something meaningful. And Machiavelli has no patience for that. He watched Florence fall because its leaders were too noble to do what was necessary. He watched the French invade Italy because Italian princes were too concerned with chivalry to adapt to gunpowder warfare. Principle without power is just performance art, and power without principle is tyranny. The goal is to hold both in tension, to know when to be the lion and when to be the fox. That is the next secret. Machiavelli said, a prince must learn to be both a lion and a fox. The lion represents force, direct power, the ability to intimidate and overwhelm. The fox represents cunning, indirect influence, the ability to deceive and outmaneuver. Most people are neither their sheep and sheep, but eaten by both lions and foxes. Here is what this looks like in practice. You are in a negotiation. The other side is playing hardball, making unreasonable demands, trying to bully you into accepting bad terms. The lion responds, walk away, show them you are not afraid to lose the deal. The fox responds, pretend to consider their offer while secretly building alternatives that give you leverage. Both are necessary. Neither alone is sufficient. The lion without the fox is too predictable. People learn to work around brute force. The fox without the lion is too weak. Eventually, someone calls your bluff. But when you combine them, when you have the strength to follow through and the intelligence to choose your battles, that is when you become truly dangerous. And here is the part nobody tells you. Being dangerous is not the same as being destructive. It means people have to take you seriously. It means your boundaries matter. It means you can't be casually dismissed or exploited. Most of your problems in life come from people not taking you seriously. Your boss overworks you because they know you won't push back. Your friends take advantage because they know you'll always say yes. Your partner disrespects your needs because they know you'll tolerate it. None of that changes through niceness. It changes when you become someone who cannot be safely ignored. Now we get to the really uncomfortable part. The part where Machiavelli talks about appearances. He said, it is not necessary to have all the virtues, but it is essential to appear to have them. And when I first read that, I thought it was cynical. But the more I understood human psychology, the more I realized he was just being honest about something we all already know. People don't judge you based on who you are. They judge you based on what they see. And if you are good but appear weak, you'll be treated worse than someone who is mediocre but appears strong. This isn't fair, but it is true. So the question becomes, are you going to acknowledge reality and adapt, or are you going to keep losing while feeling morally superior? Here is a test. Think about the most successful person, personally, not some celebrity, someone in your actual life who has real power and influence. Now ask yourself, are they successful because they're the most ethical person, or are they successful because they understand how to manage perceptions, build credibility, and leverage relationships? I am willing to bet it is the latter. They're not necessarily bad people, but they understand something you might not. Competence without visibility is invisible. Integrity without credibility is ignored. You can be the hardest worker in your company, but if nobody sees it, you won't get promoted. You can be the most loyal friend, but if you never establish boundaries, people will take you for granted. Machiavelli isn't telling you to be fake. He is telling you that your actual qualities matter less than what people believe about you. And once you accept that, you can start managing the gap. You can start being strategic about how you present yourself, what battles you fight publicly, what victories you claim credit for. This isn't manipulation, this is communication, and the people who refuse to learn it They're the ones who end up bitter and confused, wondering why less qualified people keep getting ahead. Let me hit you with something that is going to sting. You've probably been taught that authenticity is the highest virtue. Just be yourself. The right people will appreciate the real you, beautiful sentiment. Terrible strategy, because here is what Machiavelli understood that your guidance counselor didn't. The world doesn't reward authenticity, it rewards effectiveness. If your authentic self is disorganized, you won't succeed by being real, you'll succeed by developing system. If your authentic self is conflict, avoidant, you won't win by staying true to yourself. You'll win by learning to advocate fiercely when it matters. The people who tell you to just be yourself are usually either already successful, so the advice doesn't cost them anything, or they're unsuccessful and don't want you to surpass them. Machiavelli would tell you something different. Become the version of yourself that achieves your goals. Not fake, not dishonest, but intentional, deliberate. Evolved beyond your default settings, because your default settings were programmed by people who had no stake in your success. Your parents wanted you to be obedient. Your teachers wanted you to be compliant. Your society wanted you to be predictable. And now you are an adult wondering why you keep getting passed over, taken advantage of, and left behind. It is because you are still running someone else's program. Machiavelli's gift to you is permission to rewrite the code. Here is where this gets really practical and kind of scary. Everything I've told you so far is useless if you don't understand timing. Machiavelli was obsessed with fortuna, which gets translated as fortune, but really means something closer to the current of events. He said that fortune controls about half of what happens to you, and you control the other half. But here is the key. Your half only matters if you act when the current is in your favor. Think of it like surfing. You can be the strongest swimmer in the world, but if you try to paddle against a riptide, you'll drown. But if you wait for the right wave, even moderate skill can carry you incredibly far. Most people miss their opportunities because they're either too early or too late too early, and they waste resources fighting against conditions that aren't ready to shift. Too late, and someone else has already claimed the territory. The skill Machiavelli is teaching you is this: learn to read the room, the company, the culture, the moment. And when you see the wave forming, paddle hard. Here is an example. You want a promotion. You've been working hard for 2 years, doing everything right, but your boss just got replaced. New leadership is coming in. Most people would wait. They'd think, let me prove myself to the new boss first. Wrong. This is your window. The new boss doesn't have allegiances yet. They're looking for people to build their team around. This is when you make your move. This is when you position yourself as indispensable. 6 months from now, too late. They'll already have their inner circle. Machiavelli would tell you that fortune favors the bold, but only when boldness aligns with circumstance. And if you can't tell the difference, you're just gambling. We need to talk about the thing that makes people most uncomfortable about Machiavelli, his view on human nature. He didn't believe people were inherently good or evil. He believed people were inherently malleable, shaped by incentives and consequences. And this is probably the most useful insight in the entire book, because if people are shaped by incentives, then you can influence behavior by changing incentives. You don't have to change someone's heart. You just have to change what they stand to gain or lose. Let me make this tangible. You have a teenager who won't clean their room. The moralist approach: lecture them about responsibility, appeal to their character, guilt trip them. The Machiavellian approach: connect the behavior to something they actually care about. Your phone privileges exist as long as your room meets this standard. Not mean, not abusive, just clear cause and effect. You are not trying to make them a better person through shame. You are giving them a reason to act that connects to their actual motivations. And guess what? The room gets cleaned. This applies everywhere. Employees don't work harder because you give inspiring speeches. They work harder when their compensation, recognition, and career advancement are visibly tied to results. partners don't respect boundaries because you explain why boundaries matter. They respect boundaries when violating them has real consequences. People don't change because you convince them to be better. They change because you make it in their interest to change. Once you see this, you stop wasting energy on moral arguments and start focusing on structural incentives, and your life gets so much easier. But here is the catch. Everything I've told you comes with a warning label, Machiavelli himself included. Whoever desires to found a state and give it laws must start with assuming that all men are bad. Sounds harsh, right? But look at what he is actually saying. When designing systems, assume the worst about human nature. Plan for betrayal, plan for selfishness, plan for people breaking their word, not because everyone will, but because if even one person does and your system can't handle it, the whole thing collapses. This is why democracies have checks and balances, why contracts have penalty clauses, why companies have redundant controls. It is not cynicism, it is prudence. And in your personal life, it means this: hope for the best in people, but protect yourself against the worst. Don't give someone your bank account password just because they seem trustworthy. Don't make yourself professionally dependent on someone just because you like them. Don't ignore red flags just because you want to believe in someone's good intentions. Machiavelli isn't telling you to be paranoid, he is telling you to be prepared. And there's a huge difference. Let's bring this full circle. You came here because the title promised you a secret. Here it is, distilled into one sentence. Power is not a reward for virtue. It is a skill that must be learned, practiced, and deployed with precision. The people who have power over you didn't get it by being good. They got it by being effective. And effectiveness requires understanding leverage, timing, human nature, and the gap between appearance and reality. You've been playing a game where you thought the rules were fairness, honesty, and hard work. And those things matter, they really do. But they matter within a larger game that operates on different rules of incentives, consequences, strategic positioning. And until you learn to play that larger game, you are going to keep losing to people who understand it better than you do. Machiavelli wrote The Prince 500 years ago, and it is still banned in some places, still controversial, still called evil, not because it encourages wickedness, but because it reveals how wickedness already operates. And once you know how it operates, you can defend against it. You can recognize it when someone uses it on you. And when necessary, when your back is against the wall and everything you care about is at stake, you can use it yourself. Not as a first resort, but as a last one. Not to become a tyrant, but to avoid becoming a victim. So here is what you do now. You take this knowledge and you decide what kind of person you want to be. Not what kind of person society tells you to be. Not what kind of person makes others comfortable. What kind of person actually accomplishes what you say matters to you. If you want to build something meaningful, you need to protect it from people who would destroy it. If you want to help people, you need to accumulate enough power that your help actually matters. If you want to live with integrity, you need to be strong enough that integrity is a choice, not just your default state because you are too weak to do otherwise. That is the Machiavellian paradox. To be genuinely good, you must first be capable of being strategically ruthless, because goodness without capability is just weakness wearing a moral costume. And the world doesn't respect weakness, no matter how noble its intentions. You can be offended by that, you can call it cynical, or you can accept it, adapt to it, and use it to actually make the difference you claim you want to make. Machiavelli doesn't care which one you choose, but your results will. And 5 years from now, you'll either be someone who understood this and acted on it, or someone who stayed comfortable, stayed good, and stayed exactly where you are right now, wondering why nothing ever changes. The secret isn't hidden anymore, it is right in front of you. What you do with it, that is entirely up to you. Just don't use it for evil, or do, Machiavelli would say, that is between you and the consequences you are willing to live with.